It is critical to remember that this crisis we are facing is a crisis in which the sacred powers of love in the human soul are being diverted by distraction, by greed, by ignorance, and by the pursuit of power, so they never irrigate the world and transform it.
What is needed is a vision of evolutionary relationship, as a relationship that helps us come into the real, take responsibility for it, and enact our sacred purpose with a partner and for the world. When two lovers come together in this dynamic love consciousness, they create a transformative field of sacred energy from which both can feed to inspire their work in reality. Andrew Harvey. Hi, I'm Jason Michael Powers.
And I'm Heather Grace Powers, and we are the Powers of Love.
And we invite you to our journey of liberating life through relationship.
Welcome. We're so glad you're here. I think this is our fourth podcast, and we're really excited to be ramping up. We've got some wonderful guests that are going to be joining us before long, and we're just glad you're here in this now moment. We've got some really practical tools in this conversation that I think can really help your relationship.
Yeah, we're looking at 5 ways to improve your relationship. And ultimately, we believe that how you do relationship is how you do everything. And so it's through our own research, our own integration, our own failures that
most importantly,
we are doing our best to share from the inner realms of our own home and heart. And this is a daily work that we do.
It really is. It's kind of the communication in the most subtle realms as we become more aware of our own patterns and how they interact with each other. But I think in our work, in our personal journey, but the work that we do with couples and individuals, it's becoming more and more clear that when we have healthy communication in our relationships, you can really get through anything.
Truth.
Yeah.
And that's the crux and the heart of it. How do we commune? How do we communicate?
Mm-hmm.
In harmony as best as we can, and how do we repair conflicts? And so we want to just really not take a whole lot of your time today, and just thank you for tuning in. And if this is something you find value, let us know. Send us a message. You can email us at thepowersoflove1111@gmail.com. And say hello and how you may have heard of this. And also, if there's something that you want us to talk about, or if you have a question for us, we'll bring that to these podcasts.
I love that. Yeah, we love hearing from you guys. So without, making any bones about getting into the meat of this, the first tip that we have to really open up better communication in your relationship is to tell the truth. It seems so simple, and yet I think when we are in a place of discovering ourselves and maybe the places inside of us that have been used to being hidden or put away out of shame or guilt or fear of rejection and all of these things, sometimes we may not tell the truth, but maybe omit things here or there, which can be just as devastating as not telling the truth. So I thought that it was important to even speak to this, because I know that that's been something that, in our journey, like really having the bravery to be able to tell the truth, all of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you feel like in your experience, my love, has kept you from telling the truth?
Well, I think, for me, excuse me, a lifetime of feeling like if I were to divulge all of the truth, that I would be punished for it.
Mm-hmm.
And in our home, that was kind of the temperature.
Mm-hmm.
There were certain truths that were not appropriate. And especially as it would relate to emotions.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I think people are very comfortable telling the truth about their opinions or judgments, but when it comes to more vulnerable aspects of ourselves, like our emotional field or the experiences that we've had that we're not proud of, that's a whole nother ball game, because you run the risk of being punished or rejected or abandoned. And I think it brings up the most vulnerable part of us.
Yeah. We talk a lot about in our home radical honesty, and that can be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we don't want to upset the apple cart. We don't want to say the thing that's going to be our inner truth, because we want to keep peace.
Yep.
And it's important to just, share truth in love and not in retaliation, but to be honest and transparent. Um, the power of vulnerability is one of these things that you just can't underestimate, in being vulnerable with your truth. For men, I lead a men's group and we talk a lot about this, that vulnerability is where our power lies.
Hmm.
And when I've found in my own life, when I am vulnerable, I am strong. Obviously, you don't want to be vulnerable to one who's going to take advantage of you and
Exactly.
abuse you
Yeah.
and use that
Good,
information.
good point.
Be discerning,
Hmm.
you know. Um, and I'll say this for those. I mean, this is something just as a conversation piece that, I spent some times in the rooms of recovery, and specifically Al-Anon, and I remember a sponsor of mine telling me, you know, because a lot of times we want to out the truth, we want to tell the thing and just relieve ourselves.
Right.
But do you have any intention on changing that? Sometimes
Exactly.
you just want to relieve yourself of any guilt that you're feeling and offload it to your partner. But do you have intentions? And so I think when you're coming to the truth, let's say you're having an affair,
Hmm.
and you are convicted,
Hmm.
you're really working with this stuff, and you are ready to shift that. And it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
But you holding on to that, we were even last night in a class, we're learning about the chakra system,
Yeah.
and that secrets, they create these karmic scars.
Right. That's why they say we're only as sick as our secrets. And the truth is all about the throat chakra and speaking the truth. But the most important thing is that it also goes with our listening. So in communication, you've got two sides of that experience. You have a listener and you have the person that's going to share whatever that really uncomfortable thing is.
Mhm.
Our goal in relationship is to create an environment where the truth is welcomed, no matter what that is. We
Mhm.
learn it may not be comfortable, it may be painful, but what you don't have a relationship if you don't have the ability to talk through things and get to the other side and find resolution. So, creating an environment where we don't tolerate little white lies, we don't omit the truth for the sake of peace, which is a process in and of itself. We believe that the truth spoken will set us free, and as well as being listened to. The listener has
Mhm.
just as big part of that, as big a part of that.
All right. So number 2 out of 5 ways to improve your relationships, managing your expectations. We, Heather and I have been together for going on our 10th year,
Hmm.
and I am consistent. And I tell this to her often. I said, I want to meet you again and again and again, and not expect you to be who you were 9 years ago,
Yeah.
10 years ago. You're an evolving being. I'm an evolving being.
Hmm.
And we have to be able to meet each other. And so that expectation that they're going to be the same always is a foolish expectation.
Hmm.
So when we talk about manage your expectations, maybe let that one go,
Yeah, totally.
because you're going to want to evolve. And we talk about evolutionary relationships in a lot of our work, that we are evolutionary beings and we want to meet each other anew every single time.
Yeah, a big part of that is as we coach people, we really encourage people to find something that they're constantly growing in together in the same direction. Because a lot of times, what happens with couples is that, they have their work and their life, and maybe, as a mom, you're tending to the kids and the dad is working if you're in a kind of a traditional situation, or the roles are reversed. But if there's not that one thing that is intentionally growing you together as a couple, it's really hard not to live upon the past expectations, because you don't know who the other person is in their growth. You don't
Mhm.
know who they're growing to be. And sometimes when we grow, we start growing separate, and that love is hard to get back to if you don't have something intentional to keep that growing in the same direction.
Yeah. And sameness is such a secure, like, I think humans tend to want security. They want
Yeah.
that sameness. This is
Hmm.
this is where I sit every time I come into this room.
Yeah.
This is where I sleep on this
Reminds me of the
side.
church
This is
lady.
I'm on the right side of the sink. You're on the left side.
Right.
And when our partner begins to shift and change, be curious instead of controlling or expecting them to be the same.
Hmm.
Um, that, and there's so many other layers and dimensions to this, of course.
Absolutely.
But managing those expectations, and something, again, I go back to the rooms of recovery. I learned so much in those rooms that, expectations are seeds of resentment. When somebody's not living up to your expectation, there you go. There's a resentment that's becoming poison to your own being. And
Hmm.
so looking at your expectations of your other, what are you expecting them, and what are you not verbalizing in your expectations? Sometimes we
Yes.
have these hidden
Agreements. Yeah,
hidden agreements, but hidden expectations of the other.
absolutely.
I expect you to always do the laundry. That's not
No.
truth. That's not true. But if I didn't, if I have that expectation, just manage your expectations. See what your expectations are and what are healthy expectations. Heather has an expectation that when I come home from a long day, I'm going to come and I'm going to give her a kiss. Or if I'm going to leave, I'm going to give her a hug and a kiss. It's a healthy expectation.
I see. I'm never going to give up that expectation.
I thank you for that.
One thing I was just seeing as you were talking about the process of expectation. Expectation is either rooted in a past precedent from fear, or an expectation I don't want that to be different, or a fear of something in the future, or a way that you'd like to see something in the future. And I think either direction really takes us out of the ability to evolve together from each next moment and choose to be present with each other, and like you said, in curiosity and discovery, rather than in the past or the future.
Hmm.
All right, so the third one is choose leadership, not tyranny. So when I think of this, I think of, a lot of the culture has taught us the model of do as I say, not as I do. And I think, whether it's in a partnership or parenting or government, the people that often are creating the bar that people have to live up to are not living up to that bar themselves and not being honest about it.
Hmm.
And that's when tyranny comes in, because often when we're not living up to a standard ourselves, we tend to very easily judge others for what they're not living up to.
Hmm. Andrew Harvey and Chris Sade talk about an evolutionary love relationship. They talk about relationship leaders,
Yeah.
And what does that mean to be a leader in your relationship?
Hmm.
And one of the terms in our home that we love is servant leader. One of my favorite heroes of the Bible is King David. And he
Hmm.
truly models that for me, what a servant leader was. Before he was a good king, a great king of Israel, Jerusalem, he was a shepherd,
Hmm.
and he was a great shepherd. He killed the bear and he killed the wolf. Those that were threatening his flock, those were under his care. And so being a relationship leader, I think, requires us to serve one another and not just lord over and be tyrannous and controlling, but to really serve the other. And
Hmm.
that falls into so many different areas of
Hmm.
learning how to listen, learning how to yield. A good leader yields to wisdom. And I say to you,
Absolutely.
brothers, learn and listen to your women.
Hmm.
Yesterday we were in a little squabble, and I just heard the voice inside, and I just said, you know what? I just want to say yes to you.
Mm.
And I found freedom. We
Mhm.
found freedom. We made great love after that. There was this moment of just yielding to one another. And a true servant leader is not so stiff
Yeah.
and unyielding or willful.
Right. It's so
You know?
true. A true leader, I think, and we see this in our relationship, and it's probably one of the hardest skills to develop when you have two strong, guided, tuned in people that
Are you
still are
saying I'm
working
guided?
with their egos. I'm saying that you are amazingly guided,
Yeah.
but the willingness to fail, the willingness as a leader to be the one that's going to practice the example first, rather than making the other person guilted into practicing something that we're not embodying ourselves. And that's a
Hmm.
real trap. It's like, if we're going to be leaders, we have to be the first one to the table to be in practice of what it is that we're asking for others to show up as.
Hmm.
We've got to embody this word embodiment. We can't escape it anymore.
Yeah.
The do as I say, not as I do does not work.
Be the change you wish to see. We can say
Amen.
this over and over again. If you
Hmm.
want, her to be something, you be that. Show that. Lead by example of
Hmm.
what it means to be the first one to say, you know what, I'm sorry. The first one to say, I say yes. And so,
It's real, what's so beautiful about this, and we do um, sometimes a better job than others, but what happened yesterday, and I know it's happened in other times where when one is willing to do that, the whole entire energy field changes and the ability to find a place of unity becomes so much easier. It's like it takes so much internal strength to be the one to surrender. And, don't underestimate kindness for weakness, because it takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength in order to give up our rightness for the sake of our unity and our union.
and I want to share a piece that Spirit's given me right now is that place where I know for myself, when I feel the injustice of being wronged,
Mhm.
I'm in a sense of like, you will not wiggle. I will put you in the corner energetically and you will look at this. You're not going to wiggle. And so here comes the controller. Here comes the
Mhm.
tyrant. And ultimately, what I have
Mhm.
learned and what we have learned is that leave room for the Spirit of God
Exactly.
to instruct, to inform. Because when we, God will let us fight our battles.
That's right.
And if we are trying to control the other to see the error of their ways, it never works.
Yeah.
And so let go, let God inform them and lead by example.
Absolutely. And this is really, I mean, if we're talking about the mechanics between the masculine and the feminine dynamics, right? It's important. There's a quality to the masculine being that protector, being that guardian of what is sacred and true. And it's an important piece of who we are. But without the feminine, and like you said, that unseen part of us, the revelator, the feminine aspect that speaks to us in between language and speaks to us in a way that softens our heart to want to do the right thing. We have the permission and the space to become a lot of times the very thing that we're asking for in each other when we're fighting for it. Yet when we let go and we really trust, like you said, let go and know that that spirit is going to move if that's your intention for both.
And that is hinging on the fact that you have a relationship with whatever you call God, the Holy Spirit, the presence of love itself. All these, if you can find the golden thread through everything we're saying, ultimately at the end of the day, Heather and I are always going to point you back to God, point you back to the presence of love itself.
Yes.
That will cultivate these tools.
Yeah.
So the fourth out of 5 ways to improve your relationship: communicate and listen to understand. This is huge, and we talked a little bit about this. And this is something we will continue to talk about, because this is the art of communication is a game changer.
Yeah.
When you're communicating from a place of needing to be understood, we got two people that are going, no, you understand me. No, you understand me. And, we've said this before. One of our dear, dear favorite authors in the world, Jason Gaddis, in his book, Getting to Zero, talks about listen until the other person feels fully understood.
Yeah, it's so true. The distinction may be between hearing somebody's words and really truly listening. Listening is an inside job. And I know in my own journey, the more time I spend in that quiet place, being able to listen to my own subtle realm and the spirit within me, the easier it is to be present, to listen to someone else, especially when they're speaking something that is a need or a deep vulnerability. And a lot of times, I think in our dynamics, we get caught up in listening or hearing from our assumptions and our insecurities projected onto the other person's words. So we're listening through our own filter and for how we are most likely being victimized at some level by what they're saying. So it keeps us from curiosity and really being the presence of understanding so that they can feel relief to be themselves. This is where we start to suppress. If we're, constantly feeling like we have to edit ourselves because the other person is filtering how they hear us, we start cutting parts, the most magical parts of ourselves off, and we never have true intimacy because we want to express all of it. And that's an art in and of itself, learning how to do it without blame, without shame.
And taking that moment when you're in the heat of it.
Yeah.
Pause. Be still and listen.
Mhm.
Be still and listen.
Yeah.
If you need time to just go into your separate places because you're highly reactive, pause. Promise you'll come back.
Yes. Important part.
But pause for a minute. Just
Yeah.
say, look, I need some space to work this out because I'm not able to listen. I'm not able to communicate. I'm not hearing you because I'm highly activated right now.
Yeah.
And come back, but do come back and work on repairing. Because again, conflict is not a warning that you have a bad relationship.
Yeah.
Conflict is inevitable and conflict is healthy.
Mhm.
But it's that how you do conflict, how you communicate. And if you really do your best to try your best to understand the other person, reflect to them what you're understanding.
Yeah. It's like such an old statement, but I find that it's really true. And I love that Jason uses it because it can seem cliche, but
Jason Gaddis.
oh, what did I
You
say?
said Jason, but I just wanted the
Oh,
listener to
Jason
understand.
Gaddis. Yeah. Is putting yourself in the other person's shoes. And like you said, when we're highly triggered by feeling victimized by the other person's words and what they're saying, it is physiologically speaking a challenge to have enough separateness inside of you to be able to do that. But the more that we practice allowing both people to have that speaking stick to really express their feelings and to agree to create that space for each other, you begin to it does get easier. We begin to be able to hear, and I can just see that even in our own dynamic is like we get to a point where we can actually feel each other,
Mhm,
and it just softens us both,
mhm.
but for both to know they both have the talking stick to say, I know I'm going to get understood
Yeah.
here because I'm doing this for you. Now we're going to take turns. That's a really, really big piece.
And this is going to transition into our fifth way to improve your relationship. But just, something that I've had to go within myself that I know that she's not out to hurt me. Sometimes we think we perceive the most precious gift in our life as an enemy.
Hmm.
And if we really could just go, you know what? I don't believe that she's my enemy. She's out to hurt. There's just a misunderstanding here.
Hmm.
And to do our best to communicate through the misunderstanding. But the fifth way is to be supportive and have your partner's back. You know, some of Heather's posts come out of the most incredible breakthroughs in our relationship.
Hmm.
And you had posted something that was so powerful about just being each other's advocates instead of adversaries.
Yeah.
Advocacy for each other is a huge thing. Going back to Andrew Harvey and Chris Sade in Evolutionary Love Relationship, one of the things they talk about is that advocacy for each other, not just in supporting each other's dreams and wishes and
Hmm.
goals and passions and purpose in life, but to really be advocates of those sensitive, shadowy areas, those trigger points. Sometimes in our egoic,
Hmm.
mistaken identity, we end up pushing our triggers. We push those triggers on each other when we're hurt. Hurt people hurt people.
Hmm.
And so we invite you to shift into that place where you can actually support each other. And, what do you think that looks like for you and I, just in a practical?
Oh man, well, as you were speaking, I was taken back to our class last night, really learning what a victimization loop looks like in its progression.
Mhm.
And I can see that, over the years in our dynamic, when either one of or both of us at the same time are identifying with ourselves as being victimized by the other, we go into judgment, we go into fear, we go into all of these, they're almost like a cascading wave of emotions that just kind of take over. And that's when the fight, flight, or freeze happens.
Mhm.
It becomes almost physically impossible.
Mhm.
And I think identifying when that process starts maybe is a really good place to ask yourself immediately when there is a negative exchange happening between the two of you, or either one of you are blaming or shaming yourselves or each other, is to ask yourself, where am I feeling like a victim here?
Mhm.
Because the moment that we take that energy back, we're able to talk about it from, here's what I'm experiencing, what I'm experiencing. You're not responsible for it, but here's what I'm feeling.
Mhm.
This is what I need. and it negates the other person recoiling, because they feel shamed, judged, blamed, all of those things, and now they're a victim. So it's this crazy loop, as we saw.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much in there, and that's exactly where that stemmed from. Being, if you believe that your partner is your ally and your
Absolutely.
advocate,
Yeah.
you're less likely to judge them. So when that circumstance happens,
Yeah.
as Nick was saying yesterday, the quickest way out of the loop is cease judgment.
Hmm.
Just stop.
Yeah.
Stop. Realize, holy crap, I'm judging her, I'm judging him,
Hmm.
and it's coming from my fear. It's coming from my projections,
Hmm.
coming from my own wounds.
Yeah.
And so this also goes into we've really been working on. We talked a little bit, I think, on the last episode of one of our dear friends, Ron Levy, who wrote a book called The Inner Alignment Method: How to Really Have the Most Authentic Relationship with Yourself.
Yeah.
And cultivating that true adult and that inner child
Hmm.
of, the true adult inside you and inside the relationship is not here to fix, doesn't have the answers.
Hmm.
It's just here to have your back. Like, what are you feeling right now?
Hmm.
What's going on for you?
Yeah.
And if I have your back, I'm not going to try to fix you. I don't need your answers. You know your answers.
Yeah.
I just hold the space as best as I can.
Without recoiling, because sometimes it's really highly uncomfortable. And I love that, in the last session, just he reiterated, if it's negativity that's coming up, and Nick said the same thing, if it's negativity or any of those uh, contemptuous feelings, this is like the little adult inside of us trying to push away any of those horrific experiences that are just running over and over again, the patterns that we keep recreating in our victimized loop.
Yeah. So those are 5 just
I love
brief
these are great.
things. Let's just review them. We talked about to tell the truth, to manage your expectations,
to choose leadership, not tyranny, communicate and listen to understand,
and then be supportive and have your partner's back. These are 5 just basic things. There's so many things we could talk about, but we just wanted to give you something here. And I tend to go the observer place in my own being. I'm watching, listening to us, talking to us. And, one of the things, listener, I don't know if you really hear, but there's a lot of, we talked about Ron Levy. We're talking about Chris Sade and Andrew Harvey. We're talking about Jason Gaddis. Do the work, live the results. Your relationship is the most important thing that you can have.
Yeah.
It's worth all your time, worth all your investment. Find those authors, find those workshops, find those therapists that are going to help you be better. Ultimately, the crux of our relationship is the relationship we have with ourselves and ultimately with our God of our understanding. And that's what's going to get us through this dark night on the planet. We really truly believe that we go home 2 by 2.
Yeah, through relationship. It's so true. Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you're in a relationship that you're scratching your head and at an impasse or feeling the loops yourself, please reach out to us. It is the passion of our life. And work to know that, as Jason said, we heal, we are wounded in pairs and we heal in pairs. And we know that this is our piece of peace. So we would love to hear from you and see how we can support you.
Yeah, just go to thepowersoflove.com and subscribe. Pay attention. There's a lot of great things coming up, or email us at thepowersoflove1111@gmail.com. And
thanks, you guys.
Thanks for your time. Be well.